people wish the world was clean sometimes, and it was, yes, just give me a yes or a no, and I want to rely on that with 100% certainty. The world is messier than that with AI now, and people need to understand that detectors are not perfect. And the flip side of that is we can't just dismiss detectors because they do work depending on the level of accuracy that you require. I think there's a few things that the world hasn't fully understood yet, and I think that's on average, and I think that's one of the key ones as it relates to AI detection.
Hi, I wanted to jump in and give a shout out to our sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle. A little quick math. The less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems. You improve efficiency by bringing all of your business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. Now through April 15th, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. Head to netsuite.com/IonAI. IonAI, all run together, EYEONAI. That's netsuite.com/IonAI. Again, netsuite.com/IonAI. Hi, I'm Craig Smith, and this is Eye on AI. In this episode, I speak with Jonathan Gillham, founder and CEO of Originality AI, a company that has developed an AI-powered detector for identifying AI-generated content. Jonathan shares his journey from working in content marketing to recognizing the need for a reliable tool to distinguish between human-written and AI-generated text. We discuss the challenges of detecting AI content, the architecture of Originality AI's detection models, and the importance of balancing accuracy with minimizing false positives. Jonathan also provides insights into the potential risks for web publishers using AI-generated content and the future of AI detection in an ever-evolving landscape. I hope you find the conversation as intriguing as I did.
Background as a mechanical engineer by training, worked in that field for a period of time, started building different online businesses, generally in the content publishing space. Off the back of that, I built a content marketing agency where we were having writers create content. We were very heavy users of AI for a portion of that business, where we were transparently communicating to our clients that the writers were using AI to create content. And then we had a all human written division. And then it became clear, this is predating ChatGPT, but sort of post GPT-3 and some of the AI wrappers that were produced around GPT-3, that a lot of uncertainty existed between what was human and what was AI generated. A lot of people are happy to pay writers $100 or $1,000 an article. They're not very happy to find out that it was copied and pasted from ChatGPT in 5 seconds. And that's where Originality was born out of.
Yeah. And what was the content marketing agency or the content creation agency that you were working? Was that your own small shop, or was that a...
Yeah, so it was our own shop. It was called Content Refined. It was then purchased by a company called Crowd Content and then folded into Crowd Content. But it was a content marketing agency where publishers of websites that wanted to rank in Google would come to us for specialized writing that was focused on ranking in Google.
Yeah. I just asked because I have a nephew that works in that industry. And I keep telling him, that industry is going to disappear. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So that's the problem: is how do you tell what text is human generated and what is AI generated? And as I said, I was very skeptical when I first heard about you guys, uh, because there are many ways to massage AI generated text to make it have enough variation from what came out of the AI for people not to notice it. I mean, I can spot uh, straight AI generated text often, just because of the the format that a lot of these models use. You know, they always say in conclusion, or at the beginning they say in the realm of such and such. But
Yeah.
those are easy things to change. Uh, so I tried Originality AI and I was impressed. Yeah, it picked up when something was 100% AI generated, and it picked up when something was 10% AI generated. So I wanted to hear how you guys are doing this.
Yeah. So I think first, I mean, the do AI detectors work question is, I think, one that is should be asked. And I think it's um, such a new problem that people are facing that they're trying to attach existing tools and the understanding on how existing tools are used. So it's like, oh, it's like plagiarism checking, and it's really not the same, because with plagiarism checking, you can produce this sort of clear proof on, hey, here's where here are the 10 words that were copied. That's a very different use case for the detector, plagiarism detector, than it is for an AI detector. And so uh, I think there's a lot of question mark around, do they work, because they aren't perfect. Our originality is not perfect. It's a prediction. So then sort of answer the question, how does it work? It's a it's our own AI that is built to predict using supervised learning to predict the difference between, is this AI or is this human? So fed at this point millions of data sets, or millions of records of text, known human, known AI, some synthetic content in there with AI led editing to try and make sure that we are able to identify what is human and what is AI. And I think, to your point around, there's some telltale signs on, especially with like GPT 3, 3.5. GPT 4 can go a few more directions, or some of the latest LLMs from other companies. But what's if there's any adversarial prompt that is introduced and said write like X or write in this style, then that sort of those telltale signs for a human to be able to tell are gone, and it can become sort of flip of a coin for humans' capability of detecting.
But with an adversarial prompt, your system can still pick it up.
Correct. Yeah. So with any adversarial prompt or AI enabled adversarial technique. So paraphrasing is a very common technique that gets used to try and beat detectors. With our detector, we're trained on, we have sort of a red team and a blue team. Our red team is always trying to beat our detector, use the latest strategies and tactics to beat our detector, and then our blue team is building the most advanced detector, and then we try and sort of push out models that are suited for specific use cases. So we have our 3.0, we have our turbo model that is near impossible to beat, but it ends up with getting the trade off to that is it ends up with a few higher false positives. And then we have a sort of standard model where it's like a more balanced approach to a little bit of AI editing is allowed if somebody used an AI SEO tool to provide some keywords. You don't necessarily want to tag them as 100% AI, but there's some that want to say just 0% chance of AI, and our turbo model is built for them.
Huh, that's fascinating. And how large are these models, or how large is the training data that that you've trained them on?
Yeah, so we've been through a few different models, a few different data sets. So we're up to over a million, well over a million text records that have been used in the process of the creation. So sort of exact numbers, I won't get into in terms of what we're at, 'cause I'm not 100% sure on current model and the number of text records that went in there. I know we have, yeah, well over millions of data records. Um, and then in terms of number of models that we're at, so we're at sort of model about 20, fourth deployed model, but we've tested and built up we're at well over 20 models that have been created, with many of them not producing a better result than what we currently are using.
Yeah. I had on the podcast a while ago the chairman of NewsGuard. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. Are they using your tech? Or at the time that I spoke to him, he said they were identifying AI really with just human judgment, uh, which certainly you can catch a lot, as he said.
yeah,
A lot of times in very sloppy AI generated text, the copy will refer to, as an LLM, I can do this or I can't do that.
yeah.
But nonetheless, there's a lot of copy out there that I would guess a human editor or evaluator wouldn't be able to pick up.
Yeah, so yeah, familiar with NewsGuard, familiar with that problem that they're aiming to address, in terms of sort of the depth around fact checking. I'd say there's some studies that have been done around humans' capability, especially this has been more done in the academic setting, where teachers kind of care about what technology they can rely on, and can they detect AI generated content themselves. Um, Sort of pre-adversarial prompt, they end with historical understanding of their students' writing, they could detect in that sort of neighborhood of 75% of the time that it was AI generated. As soon as the student did a little bit of sort of adversarial prompting in terms of making sure that the content was written similar to their style, that it turned into a full flip of a coin, on the study. So the the cap and I think that capability of humans to detect is going to continue to diminish. GPT-2, go back 3 years, capability of humans to be able to tell the difference between AI and human, pretty high. As things have evolved, that has really turned into a problem that other AIs seem to be the most capable of addressing.
Yeah. Who's your biggest use case? You mentioned content generation studios.
Yeah, so copy editors. So basically, any user that is receiving writing from a writer, receiving text from a writer, you need to make sure that it meets a certain standard, and then pushing that out, publishing it. So web publishers are our largest customers. That's who we're built for. That's who we're focusing on. We have a lot of use cases specific to that. We have a lot of users from academia. We don't love AI detection in academia, although this problem exists in academia. The detection capabilities are not perfect. Depending on our test, we're 99.9% accurate on non-adversarial prompted GPT-4, drop down to like 98% with adversarial prompts, but we'll have like a 3% false positive rate. And that, although that's small and definitely a useful setting for web publishers who are managing writers and have some history with them, it becomes a lot more problematic when it needs to be applied with a sort of binary classification of pass or fail in an academic setting. If you produce false positives, very hard to use that tool. So although the problem's there, we have tons of teachers that are using it. We like it only to be used from an informational standpoint and not from a academic disciplinary standpoint.
Yeah, there was that famous case of a professor. I don't know if he actually failed his class, but or,
Right.
but because there were a lot of international students whose English is already challenged. And I don't remember the details of that case, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a tech. It was a professor that used ChatGPT. So especially in the early days of ChatGPT, they have some controls around this now. But if you were to ask an LLM, it always wants to sort of answer the question, and please, it's trying to do what's asked, and so it says, "Was this written by an LLM?" And then ChatGPT would produce an answer that, well, based on A, B, C, D, E, it could have been produced by an LLM, which is kind of true, but definitely not. And the prof thought that asking ChatGPT, "Did you write this?" was essentially enough to get a positive answer, and then he failed. Ran all his students' papers through ChatGPT, asking that question. ChatGPT made up an answer as we know it can, and yeah, unfortunately, he failed his entire class.
Yeah. Although, and this is something I asked my nephew because he's concerned about his writers using uh,
Yep.
these large language models. And I said, well, if you can't tell, if the human reader can't tell, what difference does it make? I mean, if I were a writer for a content generation studio, I would just crank out. You increase your output, which depending on your arrangement, could either increase your income or increase your profile within the company. Why should it matter?
Yeah, so two reasons. The one sort of obvious one is, if you're okay with using AI, which I do on some of my sites, like I think there's a great use case for the use of AI with generating text to publish. Um, but the person that is accepting that risk of publishing that content and receiving should be the publisher, and they should be the ones that receive the efficiency benefit. And so again, probably a lot of people are happy to pay, use simple math. A lot of people are happy to pay a writer $100 for an article. Not very happy to pay them $100 for a minute of work to copy and paste it out of ChatGPT. So that's sort of the fairness and efficiency. And if AI is going to produce all of this sort of excess capacity for humanity, who gets to reap the benefits. And I think that's sort of the one of the sort of the fairness component to it. And then why do they care at all component is, if there's a risk of publishing AI generated content in the eyes of Google. If uh, Google is filled with nothing but AI generated content, then why would you go to Google? Why wouldn't you just go to the AI? So I think there's an existential threat for search engines, aka Google. And I think publishers, and we have seen this, that Google is anti spam. They've sort of left it vague about AI content versus human content. But if you're publishing hundreds or thousands of articles a day, using AI with limited or no human oversight, that is bad in the eyes of Google. That's an existential threat to Google. And I think my view and a lot of other publishers' view is that publishing AI generated content is riskier than human generated content.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly with the hallucination problem, uh, yeah, some bad information can
Yeah.
slip into text if you're not careful. So it's a big supervised learning system. Uh, is the generated text evolving? How do you keep up with the market?
Yeah. So at first what's been an interesting process. So at first we were sort of thinking this is going to be very labor intensive effort to always stay on top of the next new model. And especially when sort of we were first building, we built pre-chat GPT for the GPT-3 wrappers of writers of the day, and then chat GPT launched. And so we were always felt like we were in this game that we were going to play catch up, that okay, Grok, Mixtral, Llama, as each of these new models launch, would we now need to train up on that new model. And we do. There's some component of that, but what we found is that all of these large language models are based on some similar sort of technology around transformers, trained on similar machines using the same data sets to build their model on. And the output, um, although different from a user standpoint, from our AI's capability of detecting standpoint, we see very little drop off in detection efficacy with each launch of each new model. So continue to build their data set based on every new model being launched. But the sort of performance drop off that we see has actually been diminishing and not increasing as we've had new models being released.
Yeah. How do you protect your market? Because I would guess, I mean, I'm getting a lot of pitches now for um, detectors of AI generated video or AI generated images, deep fake detectors and that sort of thing. Um, and it just seems as the tech advances, they're going to be more and more companies doing what Originality does, and some of the big ones. I mean, Amazon or OpenAI or Google could build AI detection uh, model into their products. So
Yeah.
how do you protect your market?
Yeah. So I think first, if the societal problems associated with AI generated text, so the fairness component, the societal harm due to mass propaganda, if that all could have went away with watermarking that was enforced, then originality would die, and I'd be a little bit unhappy, but also happy in that sort of the societal problems that we're aiming to solve would have been addressed. Um,
Yeah,
I'd say the second piece of that is um, it's very easy to spin up a very bad AI detector, and so I think there's open source models that are available. There's been papers that have been created. Very easy to create a low budget, very poor AI detector, and that's what we saw. I think there's 40 of them that have sort of launched that I'm aware of, and maybe there's more. As there's been more models, sort of the investment that we've put into our model significantly outstrips what I am certain is at least 90+% of those other detectors that have launched. I think what we're actually seeing is a consolidation around sort of understanding of what detectors have invested in their technology and have a research team and are pushing the detection capabilities forward, and the responsible use of AI is versus those that are sort of just spun up an open source model and said here's a detector, even though it's terrible.
yeah. And how do you guys? Is this a subscription service or is it pay as you go so people can use it on one piece of text on the fly?
Yes, we have two. We have a subscription model, and then we have a credit base. So subscription plus credits if you use more than the monthly allotment of credits. But yeah, that's the payment structure. And then we have some free parts. So we have a free Chrome extension that lets you watch a Google document get created. So basically, takes all the metadata behind a Google document and then recreates that document's creation so that you can sort of essentially watch a writer write. So if there is ever a false positive, which sort of falls in that 3% camp, um, the writers have a free tool that they can rely on to show that no, look, I really did produce this document.
Yeah. And that Chrome extension, does that look at a website uh, text, or is that something that you could do in the future, where you open up the New York Times, a New York Times article, and you click on the extension, and it says this article was high probability that 20% of this article is AI generated.
Yeah, so yes, it does that. So it'll sort of direct connect into the originalities model and say was this AI generated or not. It only works in the Google document for that recreation of the writing experience, and so that doesn't work on a website.
Yeah. And who I was talking about use cases before. Who are your biggest customers? You don't have to name names. Well, what kind of companies
Yeah.
are using this?
So marketing, so end users, web publishers is the biggest segment. Biggest customers are the biggest web publishers in the world. So some of the groups that have published that have consolidated a lot of websites, a lot of media companies that have consolidated multiple websites, and then marketing technology companies that their end customer is um, are web publishers. That's so the biggest customers for us are the biggest web publishers, and then marketing technology companies that use our AI detection within their solution for web publishers.
to ensure that their writers that they're not passing along AI generated content to web publishers.
Correct, or giving web publishers the capability of understanding their content's risk of their content's chance of being AI generated.
I'm not really familiar with the the term web publishers, but who would be a big web publisher? What kind of companies are you
Sure,
talking
like
about?
like
Yeah,
a WebMD website, like any New York Times would be big. So anyone that is publishing content on the web, just trying to clarify the difference between sort of um, non-web publishers are will be more reliant on the human. So like a print publication will be more reliant on humans in the loop for ensuring that the content meets a certain quality, whereas web publishers seem to end up on a more sort of wanting a more systematic approach in mitigating the Google risk.
yeah. And so the Google risk is that are they actively um, uh, punishing AI generated content in their what they show to users, or how is that affecting people?
Yeah, so it is Google's position on this is say unclear. Their position is spam is bad. We don't want spam. The nuanced answer, the answer becomes far more nuanced when you dig into it. Where yes, they have clearly actively punished websites that they have identified as AI generated spam. So if you're publishing thousands of articles on your site with AI, no human in the loop, um, that is clearly going to be viewed by Google as spam, and they are actively working on punishing those sites. And you will see many case studies of sites that have had this sort of skyrocket of number of articles, and then their traffic will, at some period of time later, crater. So clearly, Google is acting on it. Are they? Has it been worked into their algorithm? And are they suppressing AI generated content ahead of or behind, punishing it behind human written content? That becomes a far more unclear answer. Um, it's I think most publishers would agree that people that are publishing content on Google or on the web in order to try and rank in Google um, understand that there is a risk associated with AI generated content, and then they make their sort of risk adjusted decision on whether or not they publish AI generated or only human generated content.
Yeah. I did a podcast episode a few months ago with a guy. There have been a number of papers like this on the collapse of uh, model output toward the mean if the model as the model is increasingly trained on AI generated content. In other words, it's generating content, and then if it's being trained on generated content, you lose the long tail on either end of the distribution, and the content becomes increasingly uh, uninteresting or yeah. Is that something? Are you familiar with that problem? Is that something that has motivated you guys, or that clients are interested in?
Yeah, so I think definitely it is a problem that we're highly interested in. It is a um, I think it's a fascinating question, and we've done some of our own research around this, looking at as we're trying to identify other indicators that would be helpful in our model. We were looking at the readability um, score and the when we get human content rewritten, the range on the readability score for that human content will be far more significant, and then it'll be a very tight normal distribution on the readability score for AI produced content. And so I think that does really produce that sort of a standardized output. And as more synthetic data gets consumed, those models are going to be producing even more average content. So it is a use case that our detector has been used for in the assistance of creating known human, known AI data sets. It we can create our own. We need to be careful when we do that because we can create our own bias because we know we have false positives, we know we have false negatives. So it is a problem that we've been our technology has been used for in the help of creating data sets for AI models, ensuring that they are helping to ensure that they're human.
Yeah, who are can you name, are they the big model providers that are doing this?
Not say not OpenAI, but names that would be very recognizable.
Right. Uh, yeah, to weed out AI generated content in their training data sets. Right.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know. So big customers using it for assistance in creating data sets. Whether those the data sets are going into the model, we don't have any insight into that.
I wanted to jump in and give a shout out to our sponsor this week. When it comes to ensuring your company has top notch security practices, things can get complicated fast. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money. With Vanta, you can unify your security program management with a built-in risk register and reporting, and proactively manage security reviews with AI-powered security questionnaires. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to build trust and prove security in real time. Listeners get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/IonAI. That's IonAI, EYEONAI, all run together. And that's Vanta, VANTA.com/IonAI. EYEONAI. Give them a try and get $1,000 off Vanta, your security program management with built-in risk register and reporting.
Right. Right. The and you were saying that there's that your model has been working across new models that are being introduced. What about something like Gemini 1.5? Have you guys had a chance to test that model? I mean, the sort of most powerful models that are coming out.
Yeah. So every time a new model comes out, the red team jumps on it, builds a data set, and then we test and sort of check where our efficacy lies. And so yeah, on every model that has come out, we haven't seen. It's in the last 6 months we've not seen the efficacy of a new model dip efficacy of our current model dip below a 95% accuracy rate on new models for a standard data set. And Gemini Pro falls into that camp as well. But it's been pretty interesting to see, and sort of my theory around. I think the models are going to really start to become far more commoditized than they are now, the foundational models, because the output does seem to be all starting to become very similar between them, with differences, but the similarities amongst them from our AI detectors view has been converging, not diverging.
And is that because, as you said earlier, they're all training on the same data?
I'd say I'm not enough of an expert to know, to why, but I think that's, transformer technology, same data, same hardware, similar process, range of output, but not a wildly different output in terms of in terms of how these models are trained, how these and the data set these models are used to be trained on.
Yeah. So the sort of subtext in what you're doing is that there uh, is and will continue to be real value in human generated text.
I think that's our view, that I think humans will continue wanting to know with content was generated by a human or generated by an AI. If you're going online to read a review about a product that you're wanting to buy, you would like to not have to complete a Turing test for reading while reading every review, trying to guess if it was AI generated or human generated. And so I think there's a lot of times where humans want to know that the content that they are reading was written by a human, and not just generated by AI.
Yeah. Where do you stand on, we were talking about international students, and one of the uh, great things about these language models, I mean, it's a pretty marginal use case, is that people who uh, have trouble writing well in English, they're not necessarily stupid. They just uh, are not very good writers, maybe because English is a second language, or
Yep.
they don't have a very strong linguistic capability. Uh, and these things are a wonderful tool for them because you can write what you want to write, and the meaning is clear, even though the English is not well constructed. You put it through an LLM, and you've got a clean. Yeah. So, how do you guys feel about that use?
Yep. Yeah, so personally, I love it, and I think we use it within our team. We publish content that was generated by assisted with AI. So personally, as an engineer, I'd rather communicate in spreadsheets than words, and I often use AI to dump my thoughts into, and then get it to be like, oh, that's what words are supposed to communicate. That's how they're supposed to look, right? And so I'll copy and paste at my own writing, and I have my own trained GPTs to try and sound like me. And then, so personally, I use it for that exact use case. English is not second language, but I'm sure there's people with English as second language that are significantly better at English than I am. And then we internally in our business, we use our AI research team is English, are all English as second language individuals. They produce a lot of content for us to help document our training and where we're at in our efficacy tests. And AI is used heavily in the content that they produce. And so I think it's a great use case. I think it becomes a question mark on, is it a great use case? So would I have that same answer if I was a English literature 101 teacher and assigning an English writing assignment, and AI could do 99% of the work? I would probably have a different answer in that use case. I think it's use case specific, but in sort of our own internal use cases, we love it.
Yeah, and do you feel that people publishing AI generated text should label it as such?
I think it's a so I think bulk AI generated with no human in the loop, absolutely, should have a label. I think the line between AI edited, human thoughts, AI edited, human involvement, on ensuring that content communicates what the human wanted to. I think I think that is more questionable. I think the author should always be, and I think that the world is moving to this, but I think the author, the connection between the output and a name, is important, and I think that that needs to meet a certain threshold in terms of your own standards for if content is attached to your name in the web, anywhere, and I think that's I think ultimately the sort of final mitigating step of every piece of content should have a name that is understandable on who it is.
Yeah, and so Originality AI has, like 95+% accuracy in detecting 100% AI generated text. I mean, if I run
Yep.
something on Claude 2 and I put it into Originality, bang, it says 100% AI generated. But as you said, people are using these tools. Uh, I do a lot of research with Perplexity right now, and I'm kind of back and forth between something I'm writing and Perplexity, and if some of that language gets copied into something I'm writing, and I haven't gone through and done the math, but I've tried that with Originality, and yeah, it'll say 10% AI generated. How accurate is that?
Yeah, so it's a prediction score, so it's a prediction machine, and so it's saying the confidence that AI was involved in the creation of that document. So if it says 60% AI, 40% human, it's saying we're 60%, the machine is 60% confident that AI was used in the creation of this document, not that 60% is AI, 40% is human. And
See.
so our classifier, and so our accuracy reporting is based on that, the binary classification of over 50, under 50, and whether we knew it was AI, knew it was human. In terms of mixed use cases, AI outline, human written, AI edited. Um, we're really interested in that problem. We have multiple sort of research veins that are pursuing our capability um, of people want to understand, our tool is being used for people to understand the creation of that document, where it was used, how it was used, and does that meet our criteria? Like for your example, Craig, like there's times where you use it and that's great. And there's times where I use it and I think it's great. But there's other times where other people are wanting to enforce a certain level of absolutely no AI can be assisting you in the creation of this text. If that's their view, we want to have a model for that. If it's a mixed use case, we want to have a model for that to be able to communicate the efficacy. So, and be able to communicate the efficacy well. So the answer is um, it, all human, all AI, easy. We're moving into a world where it's going to be a mixed use case for most people. And how do we best serve that mixed use case? And that's an ongoing sort of line of research for us.
Right. So if I load a document into Originality and it says 20%, that's a 20% probability that AI was used in the development of the content, not that 20% of this content is AI generated.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And
correct.
in that case, I guess somebody uh, like my nephew's who's working with writers and wants to ensure that he's not being given AI generated 100% AI generated content. The he would, if something came back 20% uh, or 50%, then it's a judgment. If this is, then he could go back and ask, we need to know how much of this content was generated. Is that how you would use that in that case?
Yeah. So the way we recommend it being used is um, ideally not on an individual article basis, but across a writer's body of work. And if that writer has um, a long history of sort of 100% human, 100% human, 100% human, and then has one that maybe triggers like 40% chance of AI, 60% chance of being human, that's still we would want that sort of company to still have that article pass through as human, because the we're predicting to be human, and you have enough of a history of that writer's work showing up as human. And so that's the ideal use case, is to have a sort of a body of knowledge of that writer's work, and then making judgment call based on your company's risk profile of publishing AI generated content on what those thresholds are for you. And you get a feel, and ideally you have your own data to sort of get a feel for um, where that should sit. So we're hesitant to say like above X threshold is the target, because that target is dependent on everyone's personal risk tolerance with publishing AI content.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess if somebody is 100% human generated for a couple of years worth of content, and then suddenly they start hitting 60% uh, starting at a certain day, can you kind of assume, oh, they've started using AI?
I think that would be that would be the assumption that I would run with for sure. Is that if you have this long history of 100% human, and then a new level that is consistently at something different, they have changed their writing process, unless they're writing a totally new type of article, like potentially if they've switched from personal stories to scientific paper writing, where it becomes a little bit, the accuracy can be a little bit more uncertain, then I think that would be a very safe assumption that they have changed the writing process, and if it still fits within the specs that you're comfortable with, then great. If that doesn't fit within you now at least are the one that's capable of making that decision.
Yeah. And how, you're a private company, so you don't have to answer, but how quickly are you growing? And how far are you from profitability? Because I would presume it costs a lot of money to build and train these models.
Yeah, so we're self funded. So we haven't had some previous exits. Self funded. We are um, marginally profitable at this point, and will continue to be is the aim. Yeah, we've hundreds of thousands of users that are using it. Some the biggest companies in the world to individuals across the board, but we're really focusing on building for the digital marketing web publishing world.
Yeah. And the profitability, is it the sort of thing once you've amortized your initial costs, and then profitability will go up?
Um, I mean, right now, it's in a very exciting space, and we're not cash constrained on our growth efforts. Um, and so I'd answer the question that, I mean, I think at this point we are um, targeting a profitability amount that allows us to reinvest and not need to secure outside funding, and our growth efforts are not cash constrained, and so that's sort of where we're sitting.
Yeah. And do you think, again, as you were saying, uh, if suddenly somebody, Google or OpenAI, came out with a stronger model and the problem went away, um, you'd be out of business. But is that how do you see the future for
Uh,
this particular niche? Yeah.
yeah, so I don't. I think there's a chance that would happen. I don't think that's the most likely scenario. I think the most likely scenario, it's OpenAI has come out with a model. Um, they had to have it to. They were viewed as the experts, and their model, although they had it built so that so they had their own detector, own classifier, although they had it built so that the false positives were extremely low, they still weren't zero. And so anytime you're building a classifier, you're balancing between detection and false positives. In their case, they were very biased towards reducing false positives, understandably so. And that would be the same sort of criteria that I would have enforced if that was at OpenAI. But the result was they had a detector that was very inaccurate, and then a false positive rate that was low but still not zero. And so the result was, given their constraints, they needed to make it free. They needed to make it very low on false positives. The result was a detector that was pretty useless, and they ended up needing to shut down. I think watermarking is sort of talked about as the other sort of silver bullet that would solve this problem and kill detectors. I don't think that's going to be an effective means of detection, because there will always be these open models that will not have watermarking, and there will also be methods of spinning that content to avoid the watermark, and potentially reverse engineering the watermark to be able to verify if you were capable of passing it or not. So I think watermarking is going to be pretty low chance. I think there's whatever technology is in the hopper or not yet known, and will produce a new model that our detector will then be incapable of telling the difference. I think that's probably the, like, where does this industry end in 10 years? I don't know, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, who knows? I think if Q star was a thing and there was a totally new method of AIs being capable of producing text. And our detector then became incapable of telling the difference between the two. That's probably, GPT-10 comes out. Will we still be effective? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. And as I said, I've tried it a couple of times. I'm not a subscriber, but because I don't really have a demand for it, but I was impressed by the results. So you're building new models. I mean, what's next in your roadmap?
Yeah. Continuing to build models that will communicate to users the source of that content. And so whether that was AI edited, human written AI edited, continuing to build models that will continue to help people really understand where AI was involved in the text. That's where we're pursuing on the AI side. Continue to have our red team and blue team so that we're always at the forefront of detection accuracy, and then continue to build additional features that leverage what we're doing and help out any editor that receives a piece of text and needs to publish it. So making sure that text meets the criteria and the sort of quality specifications that the company that they work for want to see all their content meet. So we have automated fact checking. It's not great. It's still in beta, but we've automated fact checking to help ensure hallucinations don't get into the text, making sure content is at a certain reading level, grammar level, and just building out continue to build out tools that help copy editors do their jobs.
Yeah, that fact checking is interesting. That would be a model that somebody could run on the end product. I would imagine I mean, Perplexity does that. You can load uh, a text into that model and it'll tell you whether there are any inaccuracies.
Yeah,
But you're building, if that's an LLM, then that you're building for
correct.
that use case.
Yes,
And you're doing it on top of an open source?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So done. We've built it. On top of an open source, our own LLM. Accuracy rates, it still has the challenges of AIs with hallucinations, and its accuracy rate in terms of answering questions correctly exceeds existing models, but doesn't come close to the point of being able to replace editors.
Yeah. Well, coming from a journalism background, I'm all for protecting the uniqueness of human writers and editors. So that's great. So is there anything I didn't talk about that you think you want to mention?
I think we've talked about it a bit, but it's a sort of an interesting. It's just touched on the story, but it's an interesting kind of sort of the way the world views detectors right now is evolving. But there's sort of this a incorrect binary assumption around AI detectors don't work or AI detectors are perfect, and it's people wish the world was clean sometimes, and it was yes, just give me a yes or a no, and I want to rely on that with 100% certainty. The world is messier than that with AI now, and people need to understand that detectors are not perfect, and teachers can't rely on them with absolute certainty and fail students just because they got a detector said that it was written with AI, because there are false positives. And the flip side of that is uh, it we can't just dismiss detectors because they do work depending on the level of accuracy that you require. And I think that's something that it's funny since that the world has sort of gone on this learning journey together with generative AI, and there's a few things that I think the general consensus has gotten right in terms of how to use them. I think there's a few things that the world hasn't fully understood yet, and I think that's on average, and I think that's one of the key ones as it relates to AI detection.
Hi, I wanted to jump in and give a shout out to our sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle. A little quick math. The less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems. You improve efficiency by bringing all of your business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. Now through April 15th, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. Head to netsuite.com/IonAI. IonAI, all run together, EYEONAI. That's netsuite.com/IonAI. Again, netsuite.com/IonAI. That's it for this episode. I want to thank Jonathan for his time. If you want to read a transcript of today's conversation, you can find one on our website, IonAI. That's EYE-ON.AI. In the meantime, remember, the singularity may not be near, but AI is changing our world, so pay attention.